Hi, everybody, and good evening here from Finland. We are, working on, which one is it, after all? It's going to be our 65th, 125th, and 65th academic reading. So we've been at this for quite some time, and I think we discovered pretty well that we had left half of Ray 2 glamors undiscussed and half of Ray 3 glamors. So we completed the Ray 2 glamors last time, although, as the Tibetan says, there are so many variations, and their name is Legion, as he says. There are so many. So but now we will continue with the Ray 3 glamors, and we'll try to see whether we are affected by these, some of us more than others, but of course the personality ray of our planet is the third ray, and generically considered, the personality itself is on the third ray. So, all of us fighting the battle between the soul consciousness and the personality tendencies are subject to the third aspect of divinity, and we are certainly no longer or not free of that. Maybe after the third initiation there's greater freedom from those tendencies, but I would say that the final mastery of that level is going to come finally at the fourth initiation. Just like to gather us together here for a moment as we think about what we're trying to do. Yeah. And it's to form an instrument, an inner instrument that will help in ways that few suspect, to bring the energy of the soul. The soul has sometimes been called the triangle of the five-pointed star, to bring the energy of the soul into daily affairs, so that the outcome of so many activities turns out to be in greater alignment with the soul. And we certainly need that, because the forces of division are very strong these days, and all kinds of untoward tendencies are recrudescing, we might say. And I suspect that in the years before 2025, the final years of the era of the Forerunner, we're going to see a lot of tendencies to sweep us back into the Piscean civilization, from which we will be emerging by the time the 21st century here is concluded. DK tells us we'll pretty well be out of the Piscean energy and the sixth ray energy. Maybe not with exactitude, but we will have shed many of those tendencies. And then maybe another 20 years or so, a little less, we'll be really into the age of Aquarius per se, without the contamination of the lesser part of the Piscean energy. I just want us to be able to conceive of ourselves, scattered as we are all over the world, as a willing instrument for the objectives of hierarchy, at least on our own level. We willingly and together submerge ourselves in this, the energies of this plane on which the great illusion is the strongest, at least for us, and that is the astral plane. And we attempt to achieve a relative degree of freedom individually, and that will certainly help achieve it in the group. But we have to be very acute and unpresuming. We may think we are finished with many skandhas, many legacies that we have not really quite terminated. So we have to be willing to see individually, and that's what we're doing right now. We're working on those particular glamors that are so elusive, that hide so well, that masquerade so well under the statement, well, that's just how I am. When you find yourself using that statement, that's just how I am, look carefully. Because that is the defense mechanism to avoid transforming bad habits into good spiritual habits. There's no question that hierarchy is relying upon us in these latter days, another 5.5 years, to really come through and demonstrate that we have been, to a degree, trained in the esoteric work. Nothing can take its place. All kinds of outer plans can be made, and they're all to the good, and it's all good. However, unless the esoteric work is in place, the triangles, for instance, carrying the energy of goodwill and the light, then unless that's really in place, the men and women of goodwill, the new group of world servers, etc., will be weakened and will not be able to accomplish what otherwise they might. So we really try to take our esoteric responsibilities in group form seriously, no matter what we may be doing in the outer world. We try to realize the power of that, even though the world pays no attention to such efforts and imagines them to be misguided or fanciful, ineffective, etc. we follow the instructions and rely upon the counsel of the Master to guide us towards results which we may not even be able to fathom or foresee. You know, we have to work without attachment to results. And then if we are stable and progressive and persistent, we would have added something of value to this monumental effort which hierarchy is undertaking on behalf of the planet and all the kingdoms of nature, and of course the human kingdom too. Yes, all that. So we will sound the Om and then get into our reading. Well, one of the things that is of real value is that we really are making our way through this book. And on our Thursday Ask Meditations, we're making our way through the reappearance of the Christ. And on our Saturday Ask Meditations for the Soul of Nations, we're making our way through the destiny of the nations. That book. I really begin to wish that we could have ongoing study of the books in depth in this manner during the 5 years or so, 5 years and 3/4 maybe, that precede Wesak of 2025. I'm sure we would all benefit greatly in this. And you know, I'm cooking on ways to do that. When it comes to triangles, every Wednesday, we are reading an esoteric astrology, and a lot of us may feel we know something about astrology, but unless we can also master to some extent the science of triangles from the astrological perspective, still a lot will be missing. So let me see what can be done to offer you some chance to study the books in this way and meditate upon them. Especially, you know, well, for everybody, of course, but if you're a student in the Moria Federation, it will be very helpful to you as you do your academic work. So 5 years and little more than a half. Let's see what we can accomplish in one last, well, it's not a last, you know, but it's a kind of a last sweep through these books. And of course, even when the new material is offered, and as I say, hopefully we really recognize it and don't, you know, recommit the sin of the theosophists who just couldn't realize that Alice Bailey was bringing this through. Anyway, even though we recognize the new material and study it hard, the foundation has to be repeated. Who can imagine they've assimilated what the secret doctrine offers, or Isis Unveiled, or a number of the important Blavatsky works, or, it'll be the same with the Bailey material. It's a whole opus which is foundational to whatever will be offered by the Tibetan, and it will be a synthesis, really. I mean, you just can't begin with version 3 and installment 3 and forget what's gone before. So the pressure upon us, or for our successors, will be appreciable. And as he said, I'm writing certain things for the reincarnated aspects of yourselves. So if we're really serious, we'll be back to work with the Tibetan and helping him in this series of bridging treatises into the energy of the New Age, laying the foundation for the New Age. So those of us who feel strongly enough about it, let's resolve that that is what we will do. Just want to welcome you here a little bit. Alexandra, Anna, Anne, Anne-Marie, Annette, Antoinette, Barbara, Carl, Catherine, Deborah, Frida, George, Helen, Jan, Joan, Karen, Catherine, Laura, Leslie, Margot, Mariana, Martha, Gallahue and Martha Mickelson, Natnia, Nienke, Olivia, Risto, Stacia, Suzanne, Tia, Yvonne, and Veronica, and over here on the right, BL is helping me stay straight so I don't pull any surprises which leave you out. Okay, here we are. We're really working on glamour number, the glamours of Ray 3, and we have gone over the glamour of being busy. It's like real action instead of motion. My dear uncle always used to say to me, Michael, there's a difference between action and motion. Being the Aries type, I'm sure I was filled with motion. But action is another matter. It's purposeful. The glamour of cooperation with the plan in an individual and not a group way, because, of course, you know better, right? So just try to walk a few cats at the same time and in their harnesses and see how it works out. The cat is ruled by the third and the fourth ray. Lately, it's one of my duties. The glamour of active scheming. Well, maybe it's good on the chessboard, but it's not very straightforward. At the same time, we can hardly blame the British for their Enigma codebreaker in World War II, which laid open to them the codes that the Nazis were using in their efforts. And the glamour of creative work, well, you can throw anything together, new combinations, but it doesn't have a real motive that's in line with the plan. It's done on the lower level, and it may be effective, You know how to make the audience cry. You know how to get the audience excited. Mozart said, always make it fast and loud at the end of an act in the opera. And Puccini knew how to turn on the water faucet for people. And they cried a lot. He knew it, how to do it. But of course, those two composers had a very deep motive. They just knew a few tricks. And we have to avoid just being superficially skillful. Now, there's a bit more. We're on the third ray. Remember how important is this third ray? Being the esoteric, rather the exoteric ray of our planet, the personality ray of our planet. And we're all affected thereby. And there's a lot of trouble in our local cosmos with the third ray. Whatever being is really responsible for it. We can't necessarily say it's the star Alioth and its logos, the third in the handle of the dipper. But that particular star, which carries the third ray, does not make a beautiful arc towards the cup of the dipper. It comes down too low, too fast. So maybe that sort of visual signal tells us something about at least for us, that the third ray is not manifesting as high as it otherwise might, though there have been brilliant examples in philosophy and mathematics and economics and other areas like that, history, of the third ray manifesting in a higher sense. Now, in Esoteric Psychology, Volume 2, it kind of gives you the sense of where things are going and how they could turn out once they get better. It's right around page 40, 41, right in there. And it's really worth reading on all the rays. You know, it's not in the Glamour book, but it helps us understand force manipulation through selfish desire. Well, there's nothing wrong with being, you know, the three types of monad are called the director, the teacher, and the manipulator. Or maybe you could say creator. It has a little nicer sound to it, but, you know, with your hand, you manipulate. With your mind and brain, you manipulate, and maybe it's right kind of manipulation, but not in this case, because you just want to fulfill your lower personality and you use your intelligence to do that. So the same thing here, really, basically, intelligent use of force with wrong motive, and the Black Lodge is filled with that. The majority of them, the Tibetan seems to suggest, are third-ray monads and first-ray souls, with the, I guess, the second ray conspicuously missing, not in all cases, because the second ray also can be misused as the deluder of souls. Intense material and mental activity, that's okay, except if it blocks out the higher vision and the motive for which you should be working. Then it gets very close to busyness, doesn't it? The realization of energy as an end in itself, and you kind of forget what the energies are meant to manifest. You forget that there are custodians of the plan in the higher hierarchy and registrants of the purpose. And you just get involved with energy, but what's it for? What's the purpose? Here we have an external thing. You know, externals are always the issue here with the misuse of the third ray. Longing for glory, beauty, and for material objectives. And you see a lot of these third-ray types. You know, many of the sort of the captains of industry, the robber barons and all of that of the 19th century, who can build a more glorious, beautiful, material, external home, headquarters, whatever you want to call it, as a monument to themselves, but they are captivated by the outer appearance and, in general, submergence in illusion, glamour, and Maya, considering all of them as aspects of glamour. So we're pulling a lot of strings here, and we're manipulating a lot of energies, and we're confused, and we're off the track, and accomplishing our personal goals, but not accomplishing anything really for the wider objectives. So there's a vision, a truer vision that is missing. But it gets better over time, and who knows how long it takes. It takes a while, and you can match these up, There are 6 here and 6 above. The manipulation of energy in order to reveal beauty and truth. Maybe the third ray is not particularly an artistic ray, but the Chopin Paul Veronese, he was a great artist in the Renaissance, and probably aided by the fourth ray. The manipulation of energy in order to reveal beauty, externalize it, and certainly truth. When you look at goodness, beauty, and truth, particularly in the realm of truth, the third ray shines, and instead of disguising the truth and veiling it and deceiving others with untruth and all that, real revelation of the truth will come. The kind of, you look towards ancient Greece, the coming of very thoughtful philosophy, using the third ray particularly. It was the high use of the third ray through Socrates, through Plato, etc., even though he was basically a second ray type. With Socrates, we don't know. The use of forces intelligently, this time, for the furtherance of the plan. Sometimes you see these great financiers sort of say, well, look, my children are not going to inherit all this. They'll have to go out and make it themselves. I want to benefit humanity, educationally, in terms of their health, in terms of their environment, etc. There are some like that. Ordered rhythmic activity in cooperation with the whole. It's very hard for the third ray to learn rhythm. They just kind of want to, DK says to them, rush not from point to point, nor be deceived by the outer form and that which passes away. So there's a lot of rushing around with the third ray, but eventually, in high types, rhythm enters because Saturn is involved in a good way. And Saturn knows restraint. Desire for right revelation of divinity and light, and using the energies to reveal divinity and especially light. If we have to look at the power part, it's ray 1, love, ray 2, and light, particularly ray 3, though not missing in the other 2 as well. Adherence to right action, instead of thinking you can do anything as long as you can cut the corners and get away with it. So there's a lot of deception in the early part of the third ray. You can measure yourself against this. But finally, the law begins to prevail, and the third ray type that knows how to get around the law abides by the law, and there is Saturn at work in a higher sense. And finally, the revelation of glory and goodwill, always the externalization, the manifestation, the making visible, the making present. This is what the third ray and its subsidiary 4, 5, 6, and 7 can give us. So that's a little bit from esoteric Psychology, Volume 2, EP 2. And, as always, it's not just good enough to think that you've got one subject all wrapped up in one little section of one book, because DK has tried to separate the sheep from the goats here. He has scattered the teaching in all different books, and the very reference you need, or the very idea you need, or the insight you need may be far from the book in which a lot of material on your subject is concentrated. And basically that means, you can sigh, it means you've got to read all the books, because it's one big book. And, if you say to yourself, well, I don't want to do that, I want to get something done in the world, well, I'm sure there's a happy medium there. Just keep reading, keep studying, and keep doing. All that is possible. Going on a little further, we have a few glamours remaining under the third ray. Then we'll, next time get into the fourth ray, which nicely brings illusion down onto the astral plane and makes glamour out of it. Well, look, we're all caught. Even if you're an initiate of the third degree, you have big decisions to make about whether to indulge your causal body or to, if it's third ray, sell it to the highest bidder and follow the Christ. We all have different ways of destroying the causal body, and it's a bit of a joke that the third ray causal body is for sale. So let's see. The glamour of good intentions, which are basically selfish. Selfishness is the problem with all the glamours, standing in your own field as the lower personal self and taking up the majority of space within your field of consciousness, as a personality taking up the majority of space. There's lots of other things than our little personality. So, you may feel quite justified in your intentions, and someone comes along and says, well, hey, have you ever thought you might have mixed motives here? Have you seen what possibly is a hidden motivation in all your apparently good intentions? So, it's the question of the third-ray type. Can they be a good psychologist? Well, he particularly pointed out that the third and the sixth ray together make a very poor psychologist. Now, I don't know if it was in the case of only this one disciple, but in general, it's a lot better in psychology to be on the second and fourth ray than it is to be on the third and the sixth, because those are rays of activity and they tend to be at first superficial. So, look at the things you want the most and the things you say, well, this will really help, where help is needed, and then examine closely. Is it so? Is it so, really? Or is something hiding there which brings kudos to the outer self? You know how he talked about service at one point? That wonderful section in Esoteric Psychology 2 about service. He said, well, there's so many people that they are apparently serving, and they're well known for it, and they get a lot of applause for it, and a lot more is coming to them, really, than to those they are apparently serving. So what's the motive really, you see? Motive is everything, and even if we don't succeed in everything we try to do, DK and other masters look at what our motive has been. It's better to sustain a good motive and fall a little short than apparently succeed with a selfish motive and somehow fool people that was really your good intention untainted by selfishness. Selfishness is just a perspective. It's sort of the inability at first to see oneself as the soul and to realize oneself as the soul. And it goes further than that, because there are so many different parts to ourselves that we could realize if we could just drop our preoccupation with the lesser parts and go for the essential, go for the essence. So I'm sure all of us, I mean, you may defeat your Mars at some point. The big battle is at the third degree. However, I'm sure we all have unknown vestiges of selfishness that we would be quite shocked to realize. A lot of DK's students, when he told them, well, watch it here because this is essentially a selfish act, and they protested mightily, as did DK. And he tells that story, a little piece of personal history about how he came crashing down to earth based on his so-called devotion to his master, who was, now the Master KH, when in fact he was pretty well devoted to himself as an accomplishing and advanced disciple. But he hid it from himself, and he protested mightily when Master KH drew it to his attention, called it to his attention. No, you have me wrong, Master. But then he proved in his life that the Master had been correct, and he came crashing to earth on the weight of his own selfishness. Now, the glamour of the spider at the center, well, too many fingers in all the different pies, and want to be excessively busily involved in many things that might not concern one, and meddling and finding, there's also the whole question of trapping the prey and waiting at the center after laying the traps to devour the prey. It goes two ways. One's extroverted, one is more interior, but obviously it's a devious and constant manipulation. Some of us who've been very busy with big projects, I was an opera director for so many years, and gosh, I just had to be into everything, looking at everything, every aspect of the production. And sometimes I think, that I could relate to this quite a bit. Of course, the motive was right, correct? But, I mean, what was the method? And sometimes you even find, that sometimes the third-rate people have that look of the long arms and the reaching out and getting involved in places where they don't belong. Alice Bailey did a lot to say, mind your own business. Stay out of what you shouldn't be into. Let other people handle their own discipleship without you manipulating them in some way. And maybe some of us, anybody particular here feel like the spider at the center? It would certainly help if you had a little Scorpio going at the same time. A little bit of Pluto, Spider at the center. There's been some, I forget, movies recently maybe movies about the Lord of the Rings where these giant spiders lay in wait for those who mistakenly come within their range, and then they wrap them up in their some kind of cocoon and wait to eat them later, you know. So basically it's not knowing where you belong and feeling you know more and you know better and you can mind other people's business and you can do it better than they can. As a matter of fact, you can even do for them because they're not capable of doing it themselves, you know. Sometimes you just have to let people find out by their own effort instead of manipulating everything. Then this, we have, someone talked about this earlier, the God and the machine. It's kind of, you know, the old, well, I guess my knowledge is mostly about Baroque opera, where there's just a terrible mess by the end of the opera, and everything is unresolved. And then, you know, in those days of stage machinery, the crank starts to go around, and lo and behold, lowered from above the visible area of the stage comes this God in a little contraption to stand, and this is God in the machine. The machine is lowered, and nobody can resolve their own problems, and the God resolves everything, makes everything right, because the God is so smart. You go with you go here, this, that, the other, and God in the machine makes sure that everything comes out just right. Well, there are some people who consider themselves to be God in the machine, waiting for the end, and you know what to do. Maybe, I think someone suggested, I don't know if it was Anne Veronica or who suggested it, that this may even come from earlier Greek drama, even in the years BC. I'm not sure. Anybody want to say anything about God in the machine, or whether you're particularly affected by that particular approach? Anybody that wants to offer a thought? You know, it's the utterly smart one at the end. Everybody's stupid and doesn't know how to get out of the mess they've made, but in comes Deus ex machina. Deus ex machina is another way of describing it, God from the machine, and sets everyone straight. It's kind of a know-it-all kind of thing, you know, and the glamors of the third ray are very good with know-it-all, know-it-allism, and always knowing better than you, for sure. And maybe, you know, you've met people like that, and they want you to know what they know, and that what you know cannot measure up, and that your solution is far less. Some of these are not so attractive, are they? I mean, who wants to be the spider at the center? Who wants to be basically selfish? Who wants to kind of descend from heaven and straighten everybody else out just for the sake of one's own pride? Okay. Anyway, you know, Baroque opera, and sometimes they redo, you know, in those old productions, Baroque opera the way it was done, and you will have in these dramas which really lacked something, you know. They were not wonderful dramas, but they certainly gave a person a chance to show off their voice. You'll have Deus ex machina coming down and resolving everybody for the stupid people that, everything for the stupid people that can't get out of the mess they made. Well, this next one, the glamour of devious, nobody sees you, and ongoing, manipulation. Sometimes, I saw once,
Michael?
BL, yeah. Did I miss
Yeah, I'm sorry. Anne Veronica says yes, it was her. God in the Machine comes from ancient Greece. And I think I also remember somebody mentioning last time when we talked about this, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain from The Wizard of Oz.
Right. He's the great manipulator, Wizard of Oz, and certainly hiding something about his own abilities. But yeah, ancient Greece, they were big on the gods, and so were the Baroque people in the higher classes who were. Well, it's always been that a certain type of human being wants to be a god and wants to go there on the cheap. As a matter of fact, wants to be recognized as a god right away without even having to prove himself or herself. So this whole idea of the intelligent resolver, taking away your chance to get out of the mess you made and apportioning everybody to the right place so it's all going to work. Some of us have memories and about where we've been, and I just know I've been in Greek drama in ancient days. Take my daughter with me and some others that I know, and it's just built in. It's just the whole idea of the Greek chorus and how things were done in those days. But there was an inheritance of this coming later in later societies, and what was so interesting is the verismo of later opera did not easily come about because the people who could sponsor and pay for opera were the royalty, and they wanted to consider themselves as very, very special and akin to the gods. So there was a whole lot of mythology that was the subject of opera for so many years until things began to take a turn towards realism. And I think we owe a lot to Mozart with that. I'm thinking about a little bit deviation here, but thinking about The Marriage of Figaro. Wonderful opera and very realistic, all about how royalty really treated their servants and, trying to reinstate le droit du seigneur, where it was always the lord of the manor that got to sleep with the new bride before the husband did. Really taking on social issues and much more. Of course, it was a mixture, because when you get to Wagner, it's a mixture of realism and then a huge Norse mythology. So these two streams were running side by side, and by the time you got to the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, it really got realistic. And the mythological angle was somewhat abated. It's always showing itself, because basically, as St. Paul says, know ye not that ye are gods. Well, we are. We are gods. And the monad is a god. And there's only one God, and we're it, but we're under the illusion, the self-deception of a voluntary limitation. So this third ray has been operating a long time, and most of our problems, if I were to look at them in a generic sense, are to subdue our third ray tendencies and make them subservient to the love and goodwill which is reflecting the planetary soul. Think of our planet, a 1, 2, 3 planet, isn't it? Which in a way is the fourth in its orbit, although there's another planet in there, maybe interior to Vulcan, and it's been said to be called Adonis. And I guess the myth of, the beautiful youth Adonis has something to do with that particular planet, but it can't be considered a major planet, not at this point. So in terms of the major planets, Vulcan, Mercury, Venus, and Earth, it's a 4. And our symbol is the cross, surrounded by the circle, which is a 4. So we're a first-ray monad, second-ray soul, third-ray personality, and we have this 4-ness, the struggle, running all the way through us. So, Anne Veronica, you can speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed. Go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to ask, there are some glamors that the ray 2 and ray 3 are similar.
Ray 2 and ray what? Ray 3?
Ray 3 are similar.
Ray 2 and ray 3. Maybe in the wisdom and higher mental aspect there are some crossovers. Otherwise, they have a lot of differences.
I was wondering about the God in the machine. And can you go back, please, to the glamors of the ray 2?
Yeah. Let's go back here. Okay. Maybe it'll be easier. I'll tell you what. I'll go to page. I'll make it easy. I think I'll make it easy. You always think you'll make it easy, and maybe it doesn't turn out that way. So glamour, and about page 122, and here are the ray 2 glamours. Yeah.
One moment. The glamour of the Messiah complex and the glamour of the God in the machine. No, not that.
Well, there is, solving all problems. That from that point of view, but it is in the field of religion, particularly here. And what I notice about ray 3 is if religion doesn't make sense to the reasoning mind, they reject it. I have children on all the different rays, and some are on, my daughter's on the 2nd ray, one son's on the 7th ray, one son's on the 3rd ray. And I discover that for the 3rd ray type, the philosophical type, it really has to stand to reason. And there's much less tendency to believe. With the 2nd ray, 4th ray, and 6th ray, the tendency to believe is pretty strong. And occultism is coming in with the 7th, of course, so they can believe quite a bit too. But anyway, there's so many differences. What I would suggest, Anne Veronica, you can get my book on the rays off of Makara, and I'm comparing every ray with every other ray. Contrasts, similarities, etc. See what I say there, and maybe there'll be some understanding that arises from that, similarities and differences. Right now, there's a lot of differences, and the split between the sort of externality of the 3rd ray and the internality of the 2nd ray is pretty prominent, and that's really what we're fighting in society right now. We have money rules everything. We have a lot of people into manipulative power. We want outer glory and all that instead of the inner glory. We're kind of addicted to the 3rd ray. Everybody, whatever your ray chart may be, and we're trying to get back now into the soul ray of our planet. They are very different, very different. Just like Jupiter and Saturn, if you compare those two, you will see differences everywhere, including, in the rays which come through Jupiter and Saturn. So I think there's a very big contrast here. But you can find some things. The abstract mind can be developed very strongly in the second ray, but it's more bordering intuition. And in the third ray, the abstract mind is more mathematical and more cogitational, if I can put it like that. But still, it's the abstract mind, and it's the big picture. So the third type of the second ray, on which Master Decay, I think, finds himself, has a lot of similarities with the abstract type on the third ray. That's been my conclusion so far.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't able to put my question well because I forgot it. It was a question from the last time, but thank you. I will.
Okay, well,
continue.
dig it up, and we'll try to address it. Okay.
Okay.
Come to it, and we'll try to address it. Okay. Yeah, I listen.
And Michael?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Suzanne has a couple of questions here.
Yeah, I see that here.
Okay, I'll let you look at them then.
I see the questions. As to all have ways of destroying the causal body, can you give a brief run of the other ray ways? Yeah. And I'll tell you what, just turn to go to Letters on Occult Meditation, get in there around page 15 or 16. But I'll just, because he goes into detail about how to get rid of the causal body. So ray 1's smash it. Ray 2, make it so inclusive that it falls apart. Ray 3, gather all manner of knowledge until it's just excessive and it has to give way to the intuition. Ray 4, use the rules and laws of harmony to shatter the causal body. Ray 5, make it look like Swiss cheese, kind of laser-like, drill a bunch of holes in the causal body till it just falls apart. Ray 6, put it on the altar, the pyre. It'll burn up. And Ray 7, say the magical words, it'll implode, it'll fall apart. The magical words to destroy. Now, just so I'm giving you the right kind of information here, I believe, okay, hold on. I found that always one of the really interesting sections of Letters on Occult Meditation. And here it is, right around page 15, 16, and how you get rid of a causal body. I wasn't serious when I said sell it to the highest bidder. This was a joke coming out of Mexico for the third ray causal body. So and here on page 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, those are the places where you will find the 7 methods of destroying the causal body. Now, a lot of us are on the second ray in terms of our soul, so it's through over-inclusiveness, or naught is but me, or just gathering everything in, that the causal body just wobbles apart. I don't know how he says it, but it's very interesting. We're not there yet. Let's say I don't know anybody taking the 4th initiation, though some people say they are, whatever. But it's expansion, general inclusion. It's not so much a driving forward, like the first ray, drive forward and smash it. as it is a gradual expanding from an inner center to include the entourage, the environment, the allied souls, the affiliated groups of pupils under some one master, until all are included in the consciousness. Carried to the point of achievement, the expansion results in the final shattering of the causal body at the fourth initiation. In the first instance, achievement via the power ray, the driving forward and the forcing upward had a like effect. The open channel admitted a downflow of force or fire from the spirit, and the causal body in time is equally destroyed. Now notice that those two little words, in time. So we don't really know how long it takes. Already at the third degree, the knowledge petals of the causal body are beginning to disintegrate already then. And intuition is taking its place. So I would suggest a very careful reading here from page 15 through 19 in Letters on Occult Meditation, and I'm sure you'll find it quite interesting. And, that's one of the ways that you can trace your own tendencies and see, well, what is my soul ray after all? And, but, if you're going to use a mantram like naught is but me, which we're doing in the identify as being group, then you're using a second ray method. Naught is but me. And there's just nothing that isn't you. And of course, that's a step to realize, and you have to work at that, I think. Right, so let's see what else here. When you say you have children on the three different rays, are you referring, what am I referring to? I'm referring to soul rays. I can't read any more here. Oh, soul ray, yeah, soul ray. One son on the seventh ray, definitely an old occultist with a huge Egyptian connection, and my daughter, who's more second ray than just about anybody I know, and then my youngest son, the philosopher, third ray. So, it helps, when you have children. It's interesting to do the ray analysis of their, potential ray analysis. Anyway, you can't be sure. But they will demonstrate, if they're at the point where the soul is beginning to shine through, they will demonstrate. Now, of course, the monadic ray is in there too, and you have to kind of detect that behind everything. DK did not give the monadic rays of his students that he was writing to, except in a few instances. He gave a couple of first ray monads, and he hinted strongly when the third ray monads would appear, and also it became obvious that, like the Christ, with his obvious second ray monad, there were some of them that just definitely had that, in terms of the 1, 2, 3. Now remember that monadic rays appear on all the different levels. There are 7 of them when we're dealing with the monadic plane. But that is the subsidiary monadic ray, and the essential monadic ray is going to be 1, 2, or 3, and probably ultimately that's really the important one. Just to give you an idea, the subsidiary monadic ray for St. Paul is ray 5, but the ultimate monadic ray is ray 1. For the Christ, it's clearly ray 2 in both cases. Maybe I could say the same of Master Kutumi. For the Tibetan, it seems that a combination of the third and second rays are operative. Excuse me. And we are told that the Buddha has a third ray monad. Now, which one it is, I don't know. But he's, the Lord of light, of wisdom, and in a way of intelligence. And he says there's only 9 beings on our planet, plus the Buddha, who can put in 3 separate appearances simultaneously. That's almost like mind-boggling there. The Ray 2 monads can put in 2, and probably Ray 1 monads, maybe they're very concentrated, can only put in 1 appearance. But the Ray 3 can put in Ray 3 monads, of which he mentions the Buddha in this connection, can put in 3 separate appearances simultaneously. And the Buddha came, the seeds of the previous solar system under the third ray ripened in him, and he came also from the moon chain. Probably it's fairly rare that a monad passes through both the previous solar system and the moon chain. Maybe there are some, but usually those who are individualized in the previous solar system, previous major solar system, jump over the moon chain and show up on the earth chain before earth individualization has even taken place. And that's found, in a treatise on cosmic fire, that kind of discussion. Some amazing things, just like Alice Bailey said, as the Tibetan was dictating, she said, just vistas of possibilities loomed up before her consciousness. Things that he wasn't even asking her to write down, but just opened up to her. And so it can be for us as we read accordingly. Read in a way that reveals to us more than is on the page. And there's a lot more that is given in terms of implication than is on the page. Okay, now who am I missing? Anybody? Okay, let's see. Did I have maybe one other thing here? A couple of other things. Otherwise, I'll fall into the same trap as earlier. And, we're almost to devious and continuous manipulation. It's a major, major glamour here. I once saw a person. She was being videoed. She was, all I can call it, a habitual liar. She could not give an answer that was not a lie. It was just flabbergasting to see. It was an obvious third-ray thing, and everything she was asked was responded to as a falsehood. Kind of reminds you of some of our political situations these days, but this was pathological. I've never seen anything like it. She was quite pale, and there was not much of the energy of love or attraction or anything like that. It was just deviation from the truth. It was amazing. I never forgot it, but I can't remember her name or anything like that, but it showed me how far this can go. And finally, the glamour of self-importance from the standpoint of knowing, of efficiency. The know-it-all. I had some experiences in college with some of the people who presumed they knew it all. And people would feed that attitude and go to this individual, one individual I remember. I can still see his face, and now I recognize it as a third-ray face. At the time, of course, I didn't know any of this. And he would always be the one who made the last pronouncement on anything from the standpoint of knowing. Now, when it comes to efficiency, I would say it'd be nice if a little bit of seventh ray was mixed in there, because, you know, you can get a pretty sloppy worker on the outer plane with just the third ray, but it's certainly fast. And, you know, once you know the routine, you know where to go. And if that's efficiency, then the third ray has it. But, you know, again, it's that selfish thing. I am emphasized. My personality is emphasized. I am important because I know. I am important because I'm efficient. So please recognize that and give me my due. So these are a few of the things, and I don't know if anybody relates to this. It's kind of hard to admit these things. You know, for me, I tend to use the third ray in the more abstract sense, which can also be a problem, you know, because it gets so abstract you wonder if it has anything to do with the earth at all. But then I'm in good company with certain mathematicians and, well, that type of individual. And you know, the higher math is ruled by third ray, the lower math particularly by the fifth ray. So I recognize when it's possible to think of oneself more highly than one should, because one has certain tendencies which impress other people. It's the wrong thing, obviously, because we're all supposed to be blending as a soul, as one being, and not try to stand out in some egotistical manner. Wherever there's egotism on any one of the 7 ways or rays, the danger of glamour and illusion is very, very strong. And egotism is a type of blindness, that's all I can say, a type of blindness, where you just see a very small part. And as a matter of fact, you know, think of it, the Black Lodge types, they are remarkably egotistical. They've thought about it all, you know, and they're willing to pay that kind of price. They think they'll get away with it. But they think of themselves as superior, always, to what is humanity at the present time, and instead of helping, they vampirize humanity and take their energy because the love energy is missing. So we have a big job on this planet to bring the love and the intelligence together. It's a big job. And hopefully we can do that in our own particular work and our own expression. Now, BL, is there anybody else that I'm missing here? Because I think we'll maybe...
Yes, Leslie had a comment.
Okay, so let me get there. Sorry, Leslie. Let's see what we got here. Go to question pane. Oh, here it is. Here's the question pane. Yeah. That's right. That's right. 3rd and 6th together. Naive, contrived, complex, wishful thinking, and not penetrating. You know, really, you know, think about how the 3rd and the 6th ray, from the pathological point of view, love to impose their own points of view. You know, convert or die, basically, for the 6th ray. And for the 3rd ray, you know, you're so stupid, just listen to me. And I have it all worked out, so just accept what I say. Because I'm much more intelligent than any of you are. You know, this is the 3rd ray thing. And I've seen it in action. It takes a lot of deglamorizing to get the humility where it belongs. But interestingly enough, a 3rd ray sign, Libra, is involved in bringing in the necessary humility, an adjusted sense of right proportion. That is true measurement or true humility. And we all, you know, there are these traps along the way. We fall into traps. We've had thousands of lives, thousands of incarnations, and some of them, have been pretty much under some energies that we want no longer to be associated with. So, you know, the forcing, there's a place where, let me show you. I think it's kind of interesting. I think it's in Esoteric Psychology 2, and I'm going to use the word untouchable. And let's see what happens. I get 1. So this is the psychopathology of these rays. So, okay. Different rays. Those, here it is, 3 of them. 3 of them. Well, he deals with 2, 4, and 6 and about pondering internally and then releasing that which one has pondered about, for good or for ill. Then he talks here, so do read number 1, about 2, 4, 6. There's brooding, brooding along some creative line for 2, 4, 6, and a violent and often dangerous expression of frustration in which a man attempts to release the result of his inner brooding along a chosen line. These shooters that are coming out, believe me, they're not all Ray 1. They've been brooding a long time, and negatively, and then it's released in this murderous rage. He says in the first case, for the 2, 4, 6 here, you have genius. In the other, if paralleled by a rich emotional nature, you will have some creative, imaginative production, sort of artistic there. In the third case, you will have what will be regarded by the world as insanity, curable in time and not permanent in its effects, provided some form of creative, imaginative, emotional release is provided. This is often the struggle point of the 2nd, 4th, and 6th ray personality. And when he says personality, be careful. He doesn't only mean personality. Sometimes he conflates these. Now, when it comes to ray 1 and 5, you've seen this too, psychopathology, those who become amazingly self-conscious and aware of themselves as centers of thought. They are obsessed with their own wisdom, their power, their creative capacity. They pass rapidly into a state of complete isolation or separateness. This can lead to acute megalomania, Hitler, Mussolini, others, to an intense preoccupation with and an admiring satisfaction with the self, the lower self, the personality. The emotional, feeling, desire nature is utterly under the control of the dynamic, self-centered point of thought, which is all of which the man is aware at this time, just unaware of others and their point of view. Consequently, the brain and all physical plane of activities are equally controlled and directed toward the planned aggrandizement of the man. We're seeing this on the world stage now. The condition is found in varying degrees according to the point in evolution and the ray type, and in the early stages it is curable. If it is persisted in, however, it makes the man eventually untouchable, for he becomes entrenched in a rampart of his own thought forms concerning himself and his activities. When curable, the effort should be made to decentralize the subject by the evocation of another and higher interest, by the development of the social consciousness, and, if possible, by contact with the soul. This condition is often the struggle point for the first and fifth ray personalities. But, you can't really exclude souls here either. Now, per your question, and per the comment I made earlier, those who become strongly extroverted by the desire to impose conclusions they have reached through their one-pointed mental focus upon their fellow men. This constitutes quite often the crux, for the difficulty of the third and sixth rate people. Watch out for that word people, because it can even mean monad. He refers to fifth ray monads as fifth ray people. These people will be found ranging in consciousness all the way from the well-meaning theologian and dogmatic doctrinaire found in practically all schools of thought to the fanatic who makes life a burden to all around him as he seeks to impose his views upon them, and the maniac, that's where it ends there, right, who becomes so obsessed with his vision that for the protection of society he must be locked away. So right there, page 462, 461, the psychopathologies of certain ray combinations. And, basically, there was a man in DK's group, third ray soul, sixth ray personality. He just was only interested in the teaching, not in anybody else, and not in their life, not in anything. He just wanted to impose the DK teaching on everybody he met, and that's all he ever talked about. So he was under a heavy glamour, and I guess one of the most glamored of all of the students. His rays were ray 3 soul, ray 6 personality, ray 5 mind, ray 1 astral body, ray 3 physical body, and he was in the group for his own protection. He had almost deviated onto the left-hand path in his last life. And one more thing about him. Well, yeah, he financed the publication of the Alice Bailey books. There you go. So, the DK says, we as masters, we are not ungrateful, and you're in this group for your own protection. You have not taken even the first initiation, but I'll try to help you get rid of some of these glamours. And it's a real case study, I'll tell you. LTSK. LTSK are the letters of this individual. So the rays can tell us where we stand and the kinds of traps we fall into and the kinds of glamours that are difficult for us, traps for us. Just, what is it for you? Have you recognized yourself in any of this? We've been going through the first, second, and third ray. Have you recognized something? Some combination of things? Well, maybe, I'll ask you that. And you can, fess up to it later. It's interesting because, when you can say, this is what I see, this is the glamour that I see, and you can admit that before the group gaze, as he calls it, then already progress has been made. That glamour of self-pity is a rough one for Ray 2 types, and the glamour of criticism for those people who are, ruled by the hardline rays. Ray 3 is in there, Ray 7. Glamour of criticism. And we'll be thinking today about a glamour, I want to call it the glamour of dictatorship. We have witnessed on the world stage again events in the United Kingdom. We have witnessed the attempt to basically take over the government and abrogate what should be guaranteed by the governmental process. We have witnessed an individual, and there are many like him, that think so much of their own point of view that they don't give a damn about anybody else, and are willing to forego democracy for the sake of imposition of their own point of view. And we've witnessed the backlash. There's a big difference between the dictator and the philosopher king of Plato's Republic. I mean, both in a way have the last word, but one is supremely trained, and certainly Sanat Kumara has the last word in his ashram, The Hierarchy. There's a supreme training of the philosopher king. And when it comes to politics, it's pretty much grab what you can, manipulate however you like, and get into a position of power and force your way on others when you're of that type. Now, you know, what I have to say is that the leading character in England at the moment, or United Kingdom, and the leading character in the United States are both Geminis at the moment. And there is, with Gemini in the early days, or the egocentric days, a disrespect for the truth. There's a lot of lying. It's Mercury, you know, Mercury as the ruler, and Mercury being the deceiver when it's not being the revealer of intuition. Mercury, with its third ray personality, fourth ray soul, and fifth and third ray monad, very mental planet. But in the beginning, you know, just fool anybody according and lie to anybody to get your way. This is going on, and I think we all see it. Okay. All right, friends, I think, BL, am I okay now?
Yes, you're okay now. I don't see any other questions.
Okay, good. Okay. Okay, next time, another week or so, we'll get on to the fourth ray. It'll be on the Friday the 13th in the morning, and it'll be beginning of 127. Just want to get this correct. And morning, at least morning here, you know, in the UK and in Finland. So we'll go on to the fourth ray. It'll be interesting because presumably most of us are human beings. There is that outside chance, and as a result, we will be affected generically by fourth ray glamors. So, you know, while we're doing this, just kind of collect your tendencies and see if you recognize what it is that DK would say to you if he was saying, look, you got to work on this particular glamour. What is it? In your particular case, what is it? Or maybe there's more than one that is causing some difficulty. We've got to see through these things if we're ever going to see the truth and approach identification as reality. there's a lot lying beyond glamorous perceptions which are misleading. And we've got to get there. Okay. So here we go. And we'll do our work. And we'll meditate upon a first-rate glamour, dictatorship. We have seen a lot of people who think that they somehow know better than everybody and who want to make a monarchy out of what's intended to be a democracy. It's premature. There's only one monarch on our planet. Really, it's Sanat Kumara. That's the monarch. And everybody else is just a presumption. But some are better than others, and some really have the good of everybody in mind as they use their powers of will. So, let's just have some quiet at first. And that's to allow the coming together of all of us in the realm of soul infusion to a degree, and even in the realm of soul. We offer ourselves up as an instrument. Those who are attending, well, this is not so much a class as it is a service with some class material along with it, but okay. We're offering ourselves in service to help clarify the astral, particularly the astral atmosphere of our planet. So wherever we are as one consciousness, one being, rendering assistance on our own level to the manifestation of the divine plan. Now, the protection is necessary because we're in the area of the greatest illusion, and the members of the group there with DK did succumb to certain glamours which almost ruined them and certainly had a bad effect upon the group. So DK had a lot of repair work to do. So we're going to use that long arm cross with the eyes, the cross of divinity, he calls it. And think about, as you're doing this, trace lines of light by using the cross. As a soul, I work in light. and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. And that cross is before each one of us, and in a larger sense, before the entire group. We stay, whatever we do and whatever energies we contact, we stay within the light of the soul, which will be focused on the mental plane. Then we bring together the three lights, the vital light of matter from below, joining the light of mind on the mental plane. Giving us a vital and penetrative thought process. And then we reach imaginatively into the realm of soul light, bringing it down to blend with the other two lights on the mental plane. And the three lights are blended now as one. Three blended as one. And from it we'll grow our beam, our searchlight, which will be thrown outward, inward, onto the astral plane to detect the glamour we're dealing with and to help to dissipate it. All these glamours we've been dealing with are related, and they all have the problem of the one at the center. So now we're going to strengthen our beam. And talk about the function of our beam. The light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. Our purpose, eventually, a general clarification of the astral plane. And then the formula. And as we sound these words, we're going to visualize that great searchlight which we have together created, turned upon the astral plane. Radiance are we, and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth. The inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. The light of day of the Buddhic plane and the sign Scorpio, we turn the darkness into day, strengthening our beam so that it is becoming irresistible. We say, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. That goal is the dissipation of the glamour of dictatorship, in this case, rather evolving the servant leader rather than the self-serving leader. So think how much has been lost to humanity through dictatorship. Let's ponder that. It's very hard to fulfill the greatest good of the greatest number through dictatorship. Now, in this use of the words of power. Will throw light into this glamour as we find it, penetrating this self-aggrandizing glamour and producing its weakening and dissipation. This will happen naturally in the Aquarian age, but still there will be outstanding Leonian leaders in this age of Aquarius Leo. And so, the power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of dictatorship. The power of our united light negates the quality of this glamour of dictatorship from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind this glamour. Now we will continue with our 5 minutes of silence and intensity of purpose and see this work proceeding. And of course, this is something we can think about. We always find those who want to take the will of others away from them, who do not respect that bit of truth that may come through the will of another. In Aquarius, we will have the growth of power sharing, and eventually something unusual. Up to this time, leadership of a group by a group, as DK says. It's a very seventh ray type of expression, and when that really gets established, our whole method of governance will be changing. That does not mean that the Leo part of the stick will not be there. It will. And Leonian leaders will be present. However, it will be a type of servant leadership, and we know that, according to DK, heights of service can be reached in the sign Leo, which at first seems so selfish. So keep this particular glamour in mind. You'll see quite a bit of its expression in months and years coming up. The arrogation, arrogance, arrogation of the power that should belong to the many by the one. Says DK, the master will suggest, but will not demand acquiescence. Maybe Master Moore is a little different in that respect, but from DK's perspective, suggestions are offered. So we now withdraw our searchlight into the triple light and send the triple light, the parts of it, to the places where they belong. We refocus then upon the mental plane, but it's the mind held steady in the light. And we sound the Om 3 times, mental, emotional, physical, knowing that some little bit of good has been done by our efforts. We would like to thank all of you, Olivia, Tuya, and myself, for attending these service opportunities. and to work away in occultly sanctioned methods to relieve humanity of great problems originating in the personality. Even the planetary logos, we're told, our planetary logos on the cosmic level has a problem of personality. So it's going to be reflected for all of us as well. We just persist and we do what is given to us to do, and we have faith in our work as given by a master who knows what he's doing. Tomorrow is still the evening schedule when we'll be working, that'll be 5 p.m. GMT, working with the Soul of Nations, I think some readings from the Destiny of the Nations, and then Sunday, attracting financial resources for the propagation of this work of the ageless wisdom and for the reappearance and the externalization. So, thanks everybody. Lots of love, and let's just persist with our interior work and our external work, but not neglecting the work that nobody sees. This inner work, nobody sees it. I mean, nobody in the ordinary world. And yet it's so vitally important to do it as the Master has given it to us to do. So, it's a broadcast tomorrow, and the usual YouTube link for the next two broadcasts, Saturday night and Sunday night. So this will be converted soon, and you can re-listen if you wish, or tell your friends about it, etc. And perhaps we can increase the numbers within humanity that learn to respect the ageless wisdom in its pure form. That's really important. As DK said, look, don't change my words. Don't imagine you have to water things down. You don't. The words of a master are really, really important, and they carry something. So we hope to attract people on the basis of that writing, which is in a very pure and powerful form. So I'll say good night here to you, and pretty soon this will be up on Makara, and before long on YouTube. So thank you, and have a good day, good evening, good night, whatever it is for you. And we wish you the very best.